Why, hello there. I am Miriam, and welcome to my segment where credit is due for horror DNA. It's incredible how much can go wrong when making a film. It's such an impossible task that it's nearly a miracle that any film gets made in the first place, really. And that's why we're here today, to recognize the hardships that filmmakers have to go through to complete their tasks. We applaud them and their resourcefulness. It's amazing. Filmmaking is amazing. Filmmakers are amazing. You guys do good.
It's always really hard. It's really time consuming, and it's so much contingent upon the group of people you're working with.
And today we are looking behind the curtains of the new film Stalker, directed and co-written by our guest, Mr. Tyler Savage. Stalker is about a guy who has just moved to Los Angeles for a fresh start. Before long, he makes his first friend and even meets a woman he's particularly fond of. But when he starts to prioritize one of those relationships, the other person is not particularly happy, and the situation slowly but surely escalates. Tyler couldn't emphasize enough how important it is to have a strong crew. He explained that for Stalker they were a, quote, nimble little team, and that they really pulled together to find some solutions. One area of production where problems regularly popped up was the locations. Many of the locations fell through, and they had to either find new ones or re-plan how they were going to shoot the footage they wanted at a particular location. Tyler recalls one example in particular when they wanted to film the climax of the movie, and it was meant to be an overnight shoot. Now, according to everyone's knowledge, the permits for the location for the shoot were all in place. Alas, little did they know, it turned out to not be quite so simple.
On that day, what was funny is our head producer JP came to me and revealed to me while we were already on location that the permit had actually not come through for this. You know, it was supposed to come through, but it hadn't. Somebody was posting bills for a neighboring location to the warehouse for another film shoot, and they saw all of our stuff there, and they called the police to come shut us down. And they came and told us, you know, the LAPD will be here within the hour to shut you down. Fortunately, it was like 8 p.m. on a Friday. And so the cops just didn't show up. You know, let's shoot and let's see when they show up, we'll obviously just have to shut down, and that'll suck, and we're going to lose thousands of dollars. So we ended up shooting for 10, 12 hours, waiting for the police to arrive at any moment, and they just never came, and we got everything we needed. The filmmaking gods were on our side with that one.
I can see it now. The filmmaking gods creating some of LA's finest Friday night traffic, and someone out there realizing, maybe I have more important things to do. Honestly, I feel stressed just thinking about it. Staying on the topic of location, Tyler also brought up a scene that they had to film at Griffith Park. Originally, they wanted to stage it in a way that you could see the famous observatory in the background, but the direction of the sun in the slot that their schedule allowed them to film at this location meant it wasn't really going to work. So they had to reshape the entire scene.
It was to our advantage ultimately, but you just have to look at those things as not moments to be frustrated, but actually as moments to create and come up with some new idea.
But what happens when you have to completely shape a scene around the locations you have available?
There was an Echoplex scene where Andy plays the drums, and that was a location that we really didn't know if we were going to get. I needed some sort of venue, and it really came together just really last minute that we were able to get in there.
Although they originally had perhaps something more like an old theater in mind, the new location proved absolutely perfect for this scene. The void that was created between the two characters really added some nuanced layers to the dynamic between the two. Now, the locations proved to be quite a hassle, but at least they had all their gear in line for the shoot, right? Right?
We didn't know what camera we were going to shoot the movie on until like literally 3 days before we shot the movie.
Why is this? Well, it starts with the fact that filmmaking, especially indie filmmaking, is often about maximizing your results with the minimum amount of means possible. And one of the film's executive producers, Dean Georgopoulos, is what Tyler likes to call a film gear tech head, owning a tremendous amount of gear that he subleases to other projects and companies, owning a tremendous amount of gear that he subleases to different places. So Dean was in fact able to get some incredible deals on a lot of the gear the film needed, effectively making the film possible in the first place. But that, on the flip side, meant that they had to work with whatever gear was available on the dates of the shoot.
Originally, we were going to shoot the movie on the Red Monstro, which was 8K. That seemed almost unnecessarily high res, and I wanted to be more on the Alexa. So we were going to then do the Alexa Mini, but then he had an Alexa LF large format that was coming up. So then we were going to shoot on that. Basically, it wasn't until the last 3 or 4 days before the shoot. It was a little frustrating because you're changing all of your decisions, lenses, and the supplementary camera equipment to support that camera body.
They ended up shooting on the Alexa LF, which is a massive camera. The mini LF may be about half the size, but yeah, that's what they got.
So we were in that shitty apartment for Andy's, for example, having to deal with a camera that was almost like 2.5 feet long. And so you're like in a bathroom that is, 12 square feet, trying to figure out how to get a shot of a guy on a toilet with a camera that's like the size of like a large duffel bag. That was something that we just had to roll with. And Antonio, our DP, was definitely a little frustrated at times, and rightly so. I think it actually ended up translating well because large format cinematography has a different feel to it. And I actually think it ended up working well for the movie, even though it started as a big pain in the ass for everybody.
Then Tyler and I started chatting about some hidden traps when it came to post-production. And he continued to explain why you really couldn't separate the different phases of production at all.
The problems that come up with editorial are usually tied to time constraints from when you were shooting, because the reality of being an indie filmmaker and making a micro budget movie is we had 19 to 20 days to shoot this whole thing.
Keeping in mind that higher budget films may be shooting for weeks, if not months, until they get the footage that they're happy with. Maybe, not always. He remembers that particularly when shooting the film's climax, he wishes he had had a little more time. The time restraints meant that he had conversations with his AD and cinematographer to collectively decide which shots had to be cut and which shots maybe had to be squeezed together to get one extended shot.
We just start here and then we rack to that, and then he crosses over and we pan. And it's like, we got to get this in one take.
This, of course, means that consequently in the editing process, you have to work with whatever material you have. Obviously, it would be much better to have an excess amount of material and potential backup plans, the freedom to maybe edit things differently than what you would have planned before collecting the material, but all that is no longer an option. What you've shot is what you have, and that's what you have to work with. Simultaneously, though, you are often then also in the post-production process forced to be a little more creative when it comes to finding your solutions, and the results can be quite interesting. Tyler goes as far as to say that finding these interesting solutions can actually be a fun process. So Mr. Savage and I then generally started talking about the obstacles when filmmaking. He had already emphasized how important it is to have a good team behind you. But what else would you like to share with our audience?
I think it's just having an attitude of not being rigid. I think that that's something that happens a lot, where people are like, this is exactly what I want to happen. This is how every little piece needs to go. And then you get there on the day and something's not going to go the way you want it to go.
And with that, I am officially giving credit where credit is due to Mr. Tyler Savage and all of the cast and crew behind Stalker. You have instilled a new fear in me, and I no longer feel safe in this world. Good job. I'm Mariam, and that's all from me for now. I'll see you next time when, once again, credit is due.
The time restraint.
The time restraint.
Restraint.